So, over the last few days, it's been reported that Manchester City are willing to part ways with Nico Gonzalez if the right offer comes in this summer. Yep, just 6 months after we signed him from Porto for 50 million, City are apparently looking to get rid of Nico Gonzalez. So, does this mean he was a panic buy? And the only reason he was brought into the club was because Rodri was injured, we were in a poor run of form, and the fans were screaming out for the club to sign a six. So, the best way to cover up the cracks of our poor form and keep the fans happy was to go and find the first holding midfielder that we could find and sign him. Or all these rumours just nonsense? Well, today I'm going to talk about these rumours because it's absolutely bizarre. And if they are true, then questions are going to have to be asked of Pep Guardiola and the way he's still continuing to manage Manchester City's ageing and lacklustre midfield. So, like I just said, Nico Gonzalez was signed by Manchester City for £50 million from Porto in January of 2025. And he went on to make 17 appearances for Manchester City and scored 2 goals across 4 competitions, being the Premier League, the FA Cup, the Champions League, and the Club World Cup. And things started off a bit shaky for Nico. He obviously started and made his debut against Leyton Orient, where he then went down injured. And everyone was like, oh no, we've signed a six and he's just got injured again, so we're going to go back to watching Kovacic, Gundogan and Bernardo Silva in the midfield. But then he came back, he played very well against Newcastle in a 4-0 win. He then obviously went and scored against Real Madrid at the Bernabeu in a game we got absolutely dismantled in, but you know, he was able to come away with a goal. And you know, he would look good in a decent amount of the games he played. Obviously, he didn't look perfect. He wasn't the finished article, and he obviously was not as good as Rodri, which I think is, you know, that comparison is one of the reasons why I think he's very underrated by City fans, is because people expect him to be as good as Rodri, but he's not going to be as good as Rodri. He's still got, you know, time to grow. He's literally 23. He's a year older than me. Like, he's still got time to grow and develop as a player. But you know, towards the end of the season, he wasn't getting as much game time anymore. You were seeing Kovacic play more. You were seeing Rico play. Obviously, Rodri came back for a few games, 2 games to be precise. You know, you had Gundogan playing, and Nico wasn't really sought to be in the squad that much. He did obviously come on against Bournemouth and score a goal. I was very happy for him because I like watching him play, and I think he's a good football player, and I think he has the potential to do very well at City. But obviously, you know, he then only makes 1 appearance in the Club World Cup, playing 61 minutes of the whole competition. And that's obviously with Reinders being at the club now and Rodri being back fit. So, you know, there's a lot of talk around, is he going to stay at City? Is he going to cut it at City? Should City just cash in on their expensive mistake because they've got Rodri back now? They've got Reinders that can play as well. And the answer to that question is no. No, City shouldn't cash in on him. And the reason we shouldn't cash in on him is because Rodri can't play every single game. And if Rodri goes on to play every single game again, then we haven't learned from our mistake. And we deserve for Rodri to get injured again. Because the whole point, the whole thing we were meant to learn from Rodri tearing his ACL is he is very important to the team. That position is a position we need to strengthen, because without him and without a designated stand-in for him, we're not good enough. We saw that every time he missed a game due to suspension in the season before. And then bam, we come into the season and think, right, we don't play very well without Rodri. So we're just going to play Rodri every game. And then Rodri gets injured. Obviously, you can't predict an ACL injury, but Rodri gets injured, and then we're there again, like, yeah, we're not very good without Rodri, are we? We need Rodri to come back. So we signed Nico, play him for a few games. He has I'd say a positive impact on the team, you know, and he showed glimpses of how good he can be for City. And then we go back to playing Kovacic in that position. Kovacic puts in a good few games, to be fair, at the end of the season, the standout being the semi-final against Forest in the FA Cup, and then has an absolute disaster class against Bournemouth, like a month later. So yeah, and then we've come back to the Club World Cup with Rodri being fit again, and it looks like he's going to continue to play every game, despite the fact that he's already complained about his fitness and injury concerns to Pep Guardiola. So, no, we should not be getting rid of Nico. And if these rumours are true, then questions will need to be asked of Pep Guardiola. Because how could we get rid of a 23-year-old that we signed in January, just 6 months ago, while still employing Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, and Kovacic, who all have like max, I'm saying like 2 seasons left in them, and they should all definitely be gone by the start of next season. So not this season coming up, but the season after this, all 3 of those players should no longer be at Manchester City. And if Nico Gonzalez leaves before those 3 players, then that is he's been massively mismanaged by the club, and Pep Guardiola is still continuing to fail Manchester City in the midfield area. Because yes, we've signed Weinders, we've signed Shershi, but that's it. We've signed 2 players, right? Obviously, one to replace De Bruyne, and Weinders is more of a Gundogan replacement, to replace Gundogan, because when Gundogan left the first time, we didn't replace him properly. So then we brought him back, realised he wasn't as good as he used to be, and now we've needed to replace him again. And Weinders is a world-class player. He was one of my favourite players to watch when we were in the Club World Cup. And he looks very, very good next to Rodri. But Rodri can't play every single game. We've learned that. We should have learned that from him doing his ACL, from the multiple times he complained about the amount of football he was playing. Rodri can't play every single game. So why don't we start incorporating Nico in there? Have him play cup games. Have him come on when we're leading the game comfortably, and Rodri can come off for a rest. Have him play against the newly promoted sides. Have him grow and develop into a competent player that can play that position for a few years to come after Rodri can no longer compete at this level. Why not do that? Why would we get rid of him and cash in on him just to play Kovacic when Rodri can't play when Rodri's not fit or Rodri's suspended? Have we not learned from that? That's basically the whole of last season, was to learn that certain players weren't good enough anymore. And yes, we've got rid of Walker, which is one of the players that needed to go. But if we're going to still be relying on Kovacic to be deputised for Rodri when Rodri's not available, then we've not learned a single thing over the past 2 seasons. We should have learned after the 1-0 loss at the Emirates in 2023 that Kovacic was not good enough to deputise for Rodri. So if we get rid of Nico and we're left in that position again, then we've learned nothing over these last 2 years. And we don't really deserve any good things to come our way in the season if we're expecting the same players that let us down last season on multiple occasions to step up and be the main players in the squad this season. But you know, that's all I really have to say on the subject. I want you guys to let me know, do you believe these Nico rumours? Do you think the club are really going to let him go? Obviously it's been rumoured that he'd go to Saudi at just 23, which I think would be a huge waste of his potential, because I do honestly believe that he has the ability to succeed at City and be a key player in the years to come, part of this rebuild we're meant to be having, so to speak. Or do you think that he was just a panic buy and City should cash in on him because he wasn't good enough to play for City? You know, let me know down in the comments. You know, like the video if you enjoyed, and obviously like the video if you think that Nico Gonzalez is a good player, because I think he's a good player anyway. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Obviously really does help me out, helps push my videos in the algorithm. Obviously the goal is still 1,000 subscribers. And obviously check out the rest of the videos on the channel if you haven't already, and this is the first video of mine you're watching. With all that being said, I've been Nathan, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Shut down cases, stay belly dots to the can't see faces, chasing the bad guy chase it. You don't wanna be the one like Ace and like GTA trying to turn them out wasted. Aye, tell a bad bitch come break it, body come mad, come shake it, shit then, get back to the basics, bro, don't shut down cases, stay belly dots to the